Well, good morning, everyone. Just a quick reminder, I forgot to tell Cindy this morning. Those prayer books, if you have them, Jeannie, there's a basket in the basket right there on that table. So if you have them, go ahead and turn them into that basket. If not, just bring them to me Wednesday next week, either one. We'll collect them and then we'll give those back to the kids as soon as possible. But before we start, let's go ahead and go to the Lord in prayer. Jesus, we just love you, God. We really do. And we are a congregation and a body that just wants to see you move this morning. God, that's our heart cry, Jesus, is to see you move. So we ask that this morning that you will move. Jesus, I just pray against any distractions, Jesus, any distractions that might be hindering us from seeing you move this morning. God, just be with us and be with this message. Jesus, I pray that it strictly is from you. God, when they hear the words I'm saying, they won't see me, God, but they'll see you. Jesus, they'll see you in the midst of the words. Just be with us this morning, and we love you. It's your name I pray. Amen. So a couple weeks ago, recently I've been very bad at remembering things. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm getting older or what, I don't know what's happening, but my grandpa tells me all the time that I need a keeper, and I was like, whatever, Grandpa, I'm fine. I'm young-ish, and so I think I'm good at remembering things, but recently, I think it's because he said it, now I'm in my head, that I actually am forgetting, but I think it was, I'm not sure when it was, but a couple weeks ago, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the Thursday night, was it 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, okay. So 2 weeks ago we had the Thursday night kids jam, and I forgot to report to you guys, but it was amazing. We had 3 kids, and it was just super good. We had lots of fun. I was very exhausted afterwards. I learned that Abram, Lucas, and Kyson are actually so fast. We were playing this game called Sharks and Minnows, and we had to run from them. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to jog and save my energy. And then here comes Abram running after me, and I have to sprint away. I'm like, I didn't want to sprint. Abram, slow down a little bit. But it was really good. But when the message that we prepared for them is, we did this little hand motion thing to remember the 10 Commandments. And as we were going through them, it really hit me how much do I know the 10 Commandments, and especially this one commandment that really stuck out to me. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. And it's the fourth commandment out of the Big Ten, and it's to remember the Sabbath. As we were going through and we were talking to the kids and we were explaining the commandments and what each one was, that one stuck out to me the most, because I feel like, man, we don't talk about the Sabbath enough. We don't talk about what it is. I feel like that's one of out of the Big Ten that just go over our head, that we just completely forget about it. We know you must have only one God, or don't lie, don't steal, don't murder, and all those, but when we talk about the Sabbath, we just kind of just forget. We kind of just, okay, it doesn't really matter because of the other ones. And so I want to talk about 3 things today about the Sabbath. Number 1, I want to talk about what is the Sabbath, because to be able to follow that command, we need to know actually what we're doing. So I want to talk about what the Sabbath is. And number 2, why is the Sabbath important? Obviously it's important because it's a command from God, but why is it a command from God? Because as we know, each command from God is to benefit us. It's not to form us or strict us into a set of rules, so we have to follow God in that way, but to follow command betterments us. So what about the Sabbath betters our life? Why is it important? And the third thing I want to talk about today is, how do we actually practice the Sabbath? Because I could tell you like what it is, why it's important, all these things, but how do we actually apply that to our life? So the first part of those 3 questions I want to answer is the first part. What is the Sabbath? Before we get to what is it, I want to talk about what it's not. Because my mind and my perspective of the Sabbath before actually learning, diving into the Bible and learning at school what it is was, I thought the Sabbath was just simply going to church every Sunday morning. That was the Sabbath. That was keeping the commandment, church on Sunday morning. And that could be part of it, but that's not the whole idea. There is so much more than that. Because in the Bible, it says, and we'll get into it, but it says, you shall keep the Sabbath holy, right? It should be holy. And so my mind was, okay, I'm going to church on Sunday, so it's holy. But no, that could be it, and we'll get to that. But there's so much more in store for the Sabbath. There's so much more that God had idea for the Sabbath and that he wants for you in the Sabbath. So we're going to go ahead and figure out what it is then. And so in Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 and 3, the very beginning, it says this, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. Can you go back to verse 2, Bill? And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day. That word rested, recently I've been really enjoying like going into the original language of things. And so that word rested is Sabbath. So that's where we get the word Sabbath, is from that word rested. So what is the Sabbath? It is a day of rest. It is a day of rest. But also, if we go to the next verse, so God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. So the Sabbath is a day of rest, but is also a gift from God. It is a gift from God that we are able to have a day of rest, the Sabbath. We see that it's also holy. See, the Sabbath is different. It's different from the other days. God did all his work on the sixth day, but on the seventh day, he rested. So if you remember, I've talked about this before, previously, but that word holy is, I think, very misunderstood. But simply, what does holy mean? It means to be set apart. That's all the definition of holy is. It's to be set apart. So when God says the Sabbath is holy, he is saying that day is different from the others. And that day is a gift that you should rest on it. So that's what the Sabbath is. It's a gift of rest for a whole day from God. But also, it is a command in Exodus 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. You or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your livestock or the sojourner who is with your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. It is a command that we need to follow. So it's this day of complete rest. And it's a gift. You see that God blessed that day. He said this day is blessed. So he gifted that day to us. And then he said it shall be holy. It should look different from the other days. So why is that? Why is that so important for our lives? Why is it so important that we practice the Sabbath? Yes, it's a 10 commandment, but why? Why is it in there? How does the Sabbath better my life? I got 2 points for that. But the first reason is, as I was planning and preparing, Jesus really hit me with this idea. It is difficult to love God when you are tired and exhausted. When you are tired and overwhelmed and overloaded and burned out, it is difficult to love God. And I was like, why, Jesus? Why is that difficult? Because I feel like I can love you when I'm tired and exhausted. Well, the idea behind that is it's difficult to love God when you're tired and exhausted because you're not able to give him your all, right? You're so tired and you're so exhausted, all you want to do is rest and sleep, but you're still pushing yourself, you're still working. So it's difficult to give God your all. And especially in this society and the culture we live in, it's all about work, work, work until you succeed. And then once you succeed, work, work, work until you succeed again. And then once you succeed again, you work, work, work until you succeed. Right? That's our culture, and that's the society we work in. And listen, I'm not saying that's bad, because a busy week isn't bad. But when the busy schedule affects our relationship with God, that's when it becomes bad. A busy schedule without the rest day is bad. In fact, in verse 9, I believe, Bill, in this Exodus, "6 days you shall labor and do all your work." So working isn't bad. In fact, it's biblical. God did 6 days. But we need that rest day. We need that day so we can just be filled and just relax. We need that Sabbath. It is biblical to work. But when we work too much, or we don't take time to rest, that's when we get overwhelmed and we get burned out. And then when we get burned out, what happens is we tend to allow certain doors in our life to open up. We tend to be less guarded. We let certain doors of temptation, and temptation just seems to overwhelm us because we're just so burned out. We're so overwhelmed. And that's why it is so important to have this day of Sabbath, to follow this command. It's because when we don't, then the devil can work and he can move, because of everything around us is happening. All the work and all the energy we're putting outside of the Lord and we're putting into the world, it's easy for doors to open up in our life, for sin to creep in without us even realizing. That's why it's so important to follow this command of the Sabbath, to take a step back and relax and rest and stop. Another reason, and this one really, really got to me, and I really love this reason. I'm glad God pointed it out to me. But second reason why the Sabbath is so important, because when you say yes to the Sabbath, you're saying yes to God's rhythm. When you say no to the Sabbath, you're saying no to God's rhythm. And going back to Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation." See, that was God's rhythm. That was God's design for how a week should go. 6 days of work, seventh day rest. And also, just to point this out, because I feel like it's very important, the Sabbath day doesn't have to be on a Sunday. Like for me, example, I cannot Sabbath on the Sunday. It is very stressful and very nerve-wracking to come up here every morning and speak. I was over there, I was like, oh my goodness, there are so many people here. This is not restful at all. Grandpa was telling me who everyone was. It's like, that's not my concern. I'm just, why are they here? To hear me speak? Like what? And I'm freaking out over there, shaking in my boots. I'm trying to worship God, but my knees are shaking. And so it is very stressful. With that being said, I have to pick a new day to rest, because this wouldn't be restful for me. And so when we talk about that seventh day, it doesn't have to be a Sunday. It just has to be a day in your week that you choose to rest, that you choose to look different than the other days in the week. It could be a Wednesday, it could be the middle of the week, it could be Friday, Saturday. Recently, my rest days are on Monday, because I'm done with Sunday. I don't have to prepare anything for another week, so I get to relax, I get to rest on Sunday. So that seventh day, just wanted to point that out there, that it could be any day of the week. Does not have to be Sunday. But going back to the rhythm, so I believe there's two rhythms. There's God's rhythm and then there's the world's rhythm. And so when we say no to the Sabbath, we're saying yes to the world's rhythm, going against God's rhythm. And the world's rhythm, like I said earlier, is all about work. Working, working, working. You cannot stop until you succeed. Once you succeed, there's always going to be more that you can achieve. Right? There's always going to be more. There's always more for you. What you achieve now, it's never enough. You gotta, there's got to be more. For example, yesterday was not restful at all either. Let me tell you, I ran a 5K for the first time in my life yesterday, and I'm a pretty, in shape guy. I go to the gym every once in a while, but I woke up this morning in the most pain I think I have ever had, and I was like, Bella asked me to do this 5K, and I was like, yeah, heck yeah, it'll be a piece of cake. I'll be fine. Let me tell you. Okay, so I was the only, so they did like gender and age categories. I was the only person in my category, male 20 through 29, and I still somehow got last. Like, I don't know how, but I still got last. They gave me a second place medal, and I was the only one in my, oh gosh. But anyway, even then, like as I was racing, like I'm doing good, but then I saw my time. I was like, man, I did okay, but there was still more I wanted to achieve. I need to work, and now it's in my brain that I'm gonna run another 5K and I'm gonna win this time. I'm getting that first place medal. But that's what I mean. Like I achieved something, but it wasn't enough, and that's the world's mindset. A lot of the time, I believe, is we achieve something, but it's never enough. There's always more, always more. But God's rhythm is, yeah, you can work for that, but make sure you take time to rest. Yeah, you can work and achieve, but you can take time to rest and calm down. And the world say there is no time to rest. You succeed or you're going to get left behind. You work or you're going to get left behind. God said, calm down, rest. Enjoy my presence. Enjoy me and rest. And so that's the part of it, because we get caught in that cycle. We get caught in that rhythm of the world. But rest, when we rest, there is freedom from that cycle. There is freedom from that movement of the world. There is freedom in the world, from the world, when we rest. Rest is the fruit of freedom, is rest. And I know that sounds silly, but it's so true, because when we just rest, we feel just so much better. We feel more energized, and we feel like we can do so much more when we rest. And so rest is the fruit of freedom from that cycle that we get caught in a lot of times. Rest is the way that we can get free from that cycle. That rest is necessary, and we need it. And that's what the Sabbath really does show us. It shows us how important rest really is, and how effective it is, and what it does, and what how it fills us, and all this stuff. So that's why it's important. What is the Sabbath? The Sabbath is a day where we can rest, a day that looks different from the other 6 days. We work for 6 days, but on the Sabbath day, we rest. And then why is it important? Well, it's important because we say yes to God's rhythm. We're saying, God, your design for my week is the design I want for my life. And that design looks like a Sabbath day in my week. That's why it's important. But also so we don't get so burned out that it's easy for sin to creep into our life. So that way we can be on our guard all the time throughout the week with that day of rest. We can give God our all, because we're not super exhausted and tired. We can give Jesus everything in our week. But the thing is, because when I was first learning about the Sabbath, like I said, I thought Sabbath was going to church every morning, and then that was my Sabbath. I was keeping the holy day holy by going to church. But no one really told me what it was, and then after what it is, how am I supposed to rest? Because I can't sit still. Like I just can't. I gotta move all the time, and so in my mind, rest is sitting still, taking a nap, or whatever. But I learned that that's not the case. For some people, rest is sitting down, taking a nap, relaxing, all that good stuff. But for me, it's not that. So the first part of how do we Sabbath is you need to find out what is actually restful for you. because we're all different in that category. When most of my Sabbaths was at school when I was at YWAM, and something I did that was super restful for me was I would go to the gym, like the basketball gym, every day, and I would just shoot around for like 30 minutes an hour. And for some people, that would be like you would do that? Like, why would you choose to do that on a restful day? Well, for me, it was restful because I was able to, just do something I enjoyed. I was able to put music in and listen to worship music, and it felt like I was playing with God a lot of the times. Like, I wasn't passing to him or anything, but it just felt like he was there with me. And so that was super, super restful for me. So the first part of the resting part is, I want to clear that up. Resting isn't just sleeping. Resting is something that you can find peace in, something that you find joy in, something that really, really regenerates you, gives you more energy. That is rest. So the first part of how to Sabbath is you need to figure out what is restful for you. What best gives you rest. The other part of how to Sabbath is you have to prepare for the Sabbath. The Sabbath shouldn't just come like, oh shoot, the Sabbath is tomorrow, because when that happens, we schedule things on the Sabbath, or something comes up and we forget that it's the Sabbath. But you need to prepare for the Sabbath, whether that looks like making sure nothing on your agenda is for that day, that you can just rest, whatever that looks like. But also like getting stuff beforehand that will find you rest. For example, if something that you like to do that is very restful is to cook or make a meal or something like that, you should go the day before or sometime throughout the week to go buy the ingredients. Because I don't know about you, but grocery shopping is not restful at all. There's people around and people who might want to talk to me, but I don't really want to talk to them, so I keep my head down and run this way, and then I forget the bread, so I have to go get the bread, and then the people in the aisle there, so I'm like, oh shoot, I'll get the bread later, and then I'm checking out and I still forgot the bread. And so it's very chaotic, and it wouldn't be restful. So what I would do is I would go the day before or sometime throughout the week to make sure I'm ready for the Sabbath. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. And I was looking at the Hebrew word for that observe, because like, why would Moses use observe there? And so there was multiple definitions, but one of the definitions was plan for. And so we need to make sure that we are prepared for the Sabbath. It shouldn't just come up, boom, oh shoot, the Sabbath is today. But we should prepare for it. Make sure we are ready to rest. Because when we're prepared, things usually, it feels better, right? And also you can make a plan through your day. Like, okay, so I want to do this at this time, booyah, rest. So make sure you are preparing for the Sabbath. Don't let it just come out of nowhere, but actually prepare. And then finally, how do we Sabbath? I have 4 different movements that we should make sure that we're doing when we are Sabbathing. 4 different movements that will best, I have found for myself, so I'm going to share them with you, that have best made me feel good and ready to fight the week. And the first movement of that is to stop. We need to actually make sure that we are stopping. Not saying we're going to Sabbath and then, okay, I actually need to do this. No, we need to stop. We need to just stop working, stop with all the busyness and just stop. Because busyness is, seriously, it's really, really controlling sometimes. I experienced it in my life, and it seems like I never get sleep because I'm just so busy. So we need to just make sure, okay, I'm not doing anything on this day in particular. I'm just going to stop. That's the first movement of the Sabbath, is making sure you have a day where you can stop the work. You can stop the household chores or whatever. That's also something too. If mowing is restful for you, then you mow on the Sabbath. For me, it's not restful, right? There's too many rocks that hit me and all these different things. So I I'm not going to mow on the Sabbath. I'm going to get my mowing done the day before, right? Or some of you guys like cleaning, and I don't know how that's possible, but you'll clean the house, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll find rest. If that is restful, do it on your Sabbath. You will not find me cleaning the toilet on the Sabbath. It is not restful at all. I just can't do it. Like, why am I cleaning? I'd rather be doing something fun. But that's the thing. We gotta find things that are restful, that are actually going to rejuvenate us for the week. But we need to make sure that we're stopping, that we're not doing anything unrestful on the Sabbath. We have to stop. And then the second movement, which probably some of you guys would know it, is rest, right? We actually have to find rest on the Sabbath. If we're calling it a day of rest, then we need to find rest. And that goes along with what I've been saying this whole time. You need to find what is restful for you. It's going to look different. Everyone's Sabbath is going to look different. You need to find rest. For Ralph and TJ, something they do to find rest is fish, right? Not me. That's too hot and in the sun, and I'll probably get my feet wet. I'm not trying to do that. But mine would be go play basketball or something, or go hang out with friends, or go golfing. Something like that. That would be restful for me. So you need to find out what is restful for you. What is something that actually rejuvenates you? What is something that actually, like when you do it, wow, I feel so much better now. Find something that is restful. And the third movement is delight. We need to do things that actually bring us joy in the moment. The Sabbath is a blessed day. It's a gift of God. It doesn't have to be, we should celebrate on the Sabbath. We should delight. When I learned about the Sabbath in my school, the teacher talking about us, and he was giving us some ideas about the Sabbath, and he had a family and stuff, and he said every day on the Sabbath, what we do is we go to the donut shop and get donuts, and then we come home and have a family meal, and we just hang out as a family. Well, that was because it delighted them, right? They enjoyed that. What are some things that you find delight in? We need to find delight. Also, I didn't mention this, but it's important. Repetition is good on the Sabbath, right? Because repetition creates habit. For them, it's going to the donut shop every morning. And he was telling us this, and he was telling about how the kids knew every time they went to the donut shop, they knew it was a Sabbath, right? They knew it was a Sabbath because it was repetition, and the parents taught them that. And so repetition is good because it creates habits when we're talking about the Sabbath. It'll be like, oh yeah, it's my Sabbath, so I'm going to do this because that's what I find rest. That's where I find delight. And so the first movement is stop. The second movement is rest. The third movement is delight. And the fourth movement, I think, is the most important movement, and it's worship. I think a lot of times we overlook the Sabbath because we get to the New Testament and we see the Pharisees attacking Jesus over the Sabbath. You're working on the Sabbath. You can't be a prophet. You're doing all this bad stuff. But the mindset of the Pharisees weren't the right mindset that we should have. Right? They were so focused on the rest. They were so focused on the light and the stop. They forgot about the worship part. They forgot why they're Sabbathing in the first place. And that is because God gave them the day of rest. And so since God gave us the day of rest, we need to be grateful for it and worshiping Him on that day. Spending time with Him, being filled with Him. Because ultimately Jesus is our rest. Right? Jesus is our rest, and He should be our delight. There is nothing in this world that compares to the delight that Jesus gives me. There is nothing in this world that gives me the rest that Jesus can give me. And so when we're Sabbathing, we need to make sure that we're celebrating Jesus. We're celebrating this gift that God has given us, this day of rest that we can enjoy. We worship. And worship, we talked about it before, but worship can look different in your Sabbath as well. For me, worship would probably look like in praise and song, just getting alone with God, praising and worshiping God, celebrating who He is and what He has done for me. But it might just be opening your Bible and reading about his character and what he's done, or listening to different sermons, but just this is my main point, because worship is so important on the Sabbath. We cannot forget God when we Sabbath, because then it loses all its value, right? The whole main of the Sabbath is to go along with God's rhythm. So that means God is a part of the Sabbath. So we need to involve him in the Sabbath. Just like my basketball story, when I was playing basketball by myself for however long, I invited God into it, and it just felt so much better because he was there with me. We were playing together, and that's what you guys should do as well. When you're going to Sabbath and you find these different restful things, and you find these different things that you delight in, invite Jesus into it too. Invite Jesus into the Sabbath. Let him bring you the rest that you need as well. Let him bring you the delight that you're searching for into the Sabbath. Let him be a part of your Sabbath. And so as we close today and we take communion, that's what I really want us to remember this week. And I invite you to partake in the Sabbath sometime this week. Clear everything off your schedule and just rest. Just stop. Just delight. Just worship. Worship God. Celebrate God. Be grateful for all that God has done. And remember that he is our ultimate rest. He gave us the communion, which we're about ready to partake in. He gave us that so we may find peace and rest in him, that we may find ourselves in him. So let's remember and recognize him in our Sabbath, in our rest. But I really do, I'm going to challenge you guys this week to really start somewhere with the Sabbath. When we were in school, we were told to start small. Start small. Let it feel it out a little bit, because it's gonna feel weird. It's gonna feel awkward, because it goes against the world and our culture and what we're used to. So start small. Come up with some things to do. Make a plan. Write it down. Prepare for it. And I really challenge you sometime this week to Sabbath. And I would love to hear about it next week. How was your Sabbath? What did you do? How was it restful? And I think it's very important. Brother Ralph and Cindy did it this morning. We talk about how, it used to be Sunday morning we would come and we would share all that God did. And so I would love to hear how you guys Sabbath and things that you did, because maybe something that you did I never thought about, and I could do it too, or I could join you in that as well. And so really this week I challenge you guys to partake in the Sabbath, practice the Sabbath, but ultimately find your rest in Jesus. Find your delight in him. Jesus, we love you, God. We thank you for God, we thank you for who you are, God. We thank you that we're able to just come together on a Sunday morning and learn about you. Jesus, and life gets busy. God, life really does. And so we ask that you will help us find rest, God, that we will partake and practice in the Sabbath like you commanded to us, God. But we won't look at it as just a command, but we'll look at it as a gift. Jesus, because we see in Genesis 2 that you gifted it to us. You gave us this day and you blessed it. God, so we pray that we'll be able to practice this, God, and we'll be able to find things that are restful, but ultimately, Jesus, that we will always look to you for our rest, God. Always look to you for our delight. Jesus, we just love you and we thank you. And as we take communion, God, let us just remember what you did, God. Remember who you are and how much you love us, Jesus, because we love you. And we thank you for everything that you do. Jesus, it's your name I pray. Amen.